again, everybody. Welcome back to Cinemacast, our movie review podcast over here on YouTube and on Rumble. If you guys have yet to do so, please hit that like, follow, subscribe down below if you guys enjoy our content, enjoy our movie reviews and such. And without any further ado, let's get into today's feature, which is the 2025. I don't want to say it's a reboot. It's not really a reboot. It's a whole new entry to the franchise of The Naked Gun, which started out back in the 1980s, 1988, I believe it was. Yes, 1988. We saw the premiere of The Naked Gun from the Files of Police Squad, which starred Leslie Nielsen, the late great Leslie Nielsen. In fact, for those of you who don't know this, or probably don't know this, The Naked Gun was actually an adaptation to the TV show called Police Squad, which released on and broadcast on ABC back in 1982, which of course starred Leslie Nielsen in the titular role of Frank Drebin. And of course, the series was also co-created and written by David Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and Jerry Zucker, which I believe are, yes, they are the brilliant geniuses behind the original Naked Gun movie. And of course, when it came to Police Squad, it was an American crime parody TV show, and it only had just a few episodes to go along with. And the soul and heart of Police Squad is basically carried over into the Naked Gun movie as well. Now, when it comes to Leslie Nielsen, he had a bunch of roles between the 1950s on up to the 1990s and such, and most of which everybody knows him for his slapstick comedy, his very tongue-in-cheek humor within these movies. But that's what made the movies genuine. That's what made the movies absolutely hilarious, especially the Naked Gun franchise. And then you get into the 90s, where he had roles in a ton of films that were parodied as well. Getting into that just a little bit. So you had the Naked Gun series. He was in movies such as Dracula, Dead and Loving It, and I believe, yeah, that was a Mel Brooks film. He had Spy Hard, Mr. Magoo, Wrongfully Accused, and of course, people may know him for his roles in Scary Movie 3 and 4, where he played President Harris in the movies. And he starred all the way up in some movies up until 2011, until Leslie Nielsen sadly passed away in 2010 at the age of 84. Now, the Naked Gun franchise, it only consisted of 3 movies, which was from the Files of Police Squad, which released in 88, The Smell of Fear in 91, and The Final Insult in 94. So each movie released pretty much 3 to 4 years apart from each other, and The Final Insult, which was the last one. And it's odd, too, because the way the movies were titled back then, you had the Naked Gun, you had the Naked Gun 2.5, and it's like, okay, well, what happened to 2? And then you got 33 1/3. And it's funny that I mentioned that because James Rolfe, who in the YouTube World of Fame, who, you know, everybody knows him as the angry video game nerd, he did a I guess it was not really a review, but he was talking about sequels that nobody heard of, and the Naked Gun made his list, and he was like 33 1/3. What happened to 3 all the way up to 32? You know, it's like, that's a lot of sequels, but that was the way they parodied the movie itself. You know, it breaks the fourth wall, and that's what these movies do. They break the fourth wall. They add a ton of humor to it, and it's just laugh out loud funny. And then, of course, you have right now the newest one, which stars Liam Neeson in it, in the role of Frank Drebin Jr., actually. So, let's get right into it. So, yes, The Naked Gun 2025 is an American crime action comedy drama, or not drama, but comedy film, directed by Akiva Schaffer, I guess that's his name. Okay, I'm not too familiar with a lot. Let's see. He did the movie Hot Rod. I remember hearing about Hot Rod. Never really watched it. Oh, he did The Watch. Okay, The Watch with Ben Stiller and Vince Vaughn. That was actually a pretty funny movie right there. That's one I definitely enjoyed. Bringsby Bear. Why does it look like the Ginger Dead Man? I don't even fucking know. there was a Chippendales Rescue Rangers movie. I didn't know there was an animated movie that he did in 2022. I did not know that. He also had some credits too to his name. He starred in some of the movies that he pretty much directed, and he even had the role of Alice Cooper in the Weird, the Al Yankovic story. I didn't know that. Okay, so yeah, he's got a few movies under his belt, and not too familiar, with them and all. But with this one here, I will say, like toward the end of my review, it's I guess you can say it's a hit or miss. There is an old school audience that doesn't get with the film because, well, when you hear Naked Gun, you hear and see Leslie Nielsen. There is nobody that can top or replace Leslie Nielsen's type of humor in these movies. Now, I will go on to say, and what kind of turned me off a little bit from wanting to see this movie, and I forgot all about it until now, is that it's produced by Seth MacFarlane, the guy who brought you The Orville and Family Guy. And I don't care. I really don't care too much for Seth MacFarlane, mainly for a lot of his Activision beliefs, his political beliefs. This is somebody who, he's one of those that endorsed Joe Biden. This is the guy who wanted to fuck America up. But we will save that for our political podcast. If you guys want to check that out, it's called Tune In Live. But yeah, there's reasons why I do not support or like Seth MacFarlane. I mean, and he does have some decent comedy under his belt. Family Guy does have some episodes that are pretty hilarious. That will get you, eyes rolling with tears and such. But yeah, in this day and age, I don't care too much for him. So that's one thing that did turn me off from seeing it or from wanting to see it. But I actually watched it myself in a way. So yeah, this movie, it stars Liam Neeson in the main role, and then you got Pamela Anderson, Paul Walter Hauser, Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, I've seen him in a lot of movies lately, a lot of good ones too. He was in one of the Resident Evil Retribution, and that was like the worst of the series right there. Back in 2009, he was the Blob in X-Men Origins Wolverine. He played a lot of roles. Recently, I think I did a review recently for the movie Abigail. He was in that movie. There's some other movies I'm going to have to check out here soon, and yeah. But I did see Kevin Durant in a lot of decent movies, and he's a tongue-in-cheek actor, but he's something that's well known. It's kind of like you see that one guy that stars in every Rob Zombie movie and then other movies outside of that, and I'm like, oh, I know that guy. He's one of those people. But I will say, like, Pamela Anderson's character, her character, her presence in this movie, it almost kind of feels like Priscilla Presley in the original Naked Gun, of course. And what's also funny is there is a brief 2-second cameo that Priscilla Presley makes in this movie, and she's reprising her role as Jane Spencer Drebin, who was the wife of the late Frank Drebin and Frank Drebin Jr.'s mother. And I think that was a very top notch cameo spot for her. And it's like you got this movie, and you do have a scene where you see the photograph of Frank Drebin, in his all, from the original movie. And of course you do see other pictures like Ed Hodgkin, who's played by, oh God, I forgot who the hell played Frank Hodgkin. Not Ed, I mean, I'm getting my words mixed up. Let me go back here. Okay, so, Ed Hodgkin, I'm Hodgkin. It's Hodgkin. I don't know where I got it. Oh yeah, George Kennedy. The late George Kennedy, who played Ed Hodgkin, and of course O.J. Simpson, who played Detective Norberg. So if you've seen the trailer, then you see the black officer standing there looking at O.J. Simpson's picture, and he just kind of shakes his head no. Yeah, that's the guy. So yes, O.J. Simpson. If you're living under a rock or you've never seen these movies, yes, O.J. Simpson. He had a role in the Naked Gun franchise, all 3 movies, and it was absolutely hilarious too. So yeah, after several years of development, including a direct-to-TV sequel starring Leslie Nielsen and a reboot starring Ed Helms. What's that name sound from? Okay, I know who he's from. The Office. Okay. It was announced that Seth MacFarlane had been hired to develop the project in January of 2021 and expressed interest in casting Nielsen or Neeson. Is it Nielsen or Neeson? Neeson. I don't know why I said. Oh, Leslie Nielsen. I keep getting the fucking names mixed up. You know, you gotta look at oh, I see what they did there. So, okay, I'm just now looking at it if you guys are paying attention. So, Leslie Nielsen is the original Frank Drebin. Liam Neeson is the new Frank Drebin. Like, you see where I'm getting at? The initials, LN. That's where I'm getting confused out. Like, that is very clever. That's very clever. I mean, that right there, I just now noticed. I don't know if anybody else noticed it. That is breaking the fourth wall right there with this movie already. The name, you know, Leslie, Liam, Nielsen, Neeson. Oh my God. I can't believe I did not even see that before until now. So, let's see. Although MacFarlane was hired to direct, Schaefer replaced him after the film was greenlit in October 2022, and Neeson was officially cast in the main role. And then you got Pamela Anderson, who was cast in 2024, and further casting took place the following month. And then filming began in Atlanta that month and wrapped up in June. This movie just came out July 28th in select theater in New York City, but it officially released in the U.S. August 1st this year. Let's get into the plot just a little bit. I'm not going to go deep into the story because there is a lot that does happen with this movie. Just like with any of the Naked Gun movies, you know, you got a basic plot, you got a basic story of a criminal, and you got the cop chasing after the criminal, and a whole lot of mayhem takes place. So you got Frank Drebin, who dispatches a gang of bank robbers while disguised as a schoolgirl. And you should already know this. This was in the trailer where he goes into the bank that's being robbed, and he takes off the schoolgirl outfit, and he starts beating up all these criminals and such. So yeah, that is the opening of the movie. I will say, however, it's a big downer. If you are an old school Naked Gun fan, you're not going to get the original opening that was in the original movies. You know, with the classic police car driving down the road with the theme song. The theme song in this movie is completely absent, so that may be a little downer. But what I did notice, and I'm like, why are they doing this with this movie? Because it's from Paramount Pictures, and recently you just had the latest Mission Impossible movie come out, which was The Final Reckoning. So the opening kind of feels like, okay, this is what, a Mission Impossible parody? Like, it almost like it's trying to copy the Mission Impossible movies, or at least the last few movies, you know, with the way the opening is. And I'm like, no, that does not work at all. I see what they're trying to do. You know, both movies are from Paramount, and both movies came out within the same year. And I'm just like, no, that does not work. I'm sorry. Like, if you got a movie to a franchise that's already brilliantly made, like, at least have some throwback. Like, I was expecting them to do the original opening to the movie. It's like, okay, you got him thwarting some bad guys, and then the opening sequence starts. Like, no, it kind of feels like a Mission Impossible parody in a sense. And that's sad. That's sad that they went down that route with this movie, but still, you know, the opening only lasted maybe about, I don't know, 30 to 60 seconds long. And that's all I give it to, you know. But this whole intro, the whole opening scene with this bank robbery, it involves one of the plot members, played by Kevin Durant, who steals this gadget from the bank called a plot device from a safe deposit box and gives it to one of the main criminals within the movie. And I remember what his name is. I think, yeah, Richard Kane, who's played by Danny Huston. So basically, you know, the whole movie is Drebin, who has to find out who's got this device, who's involved with it, get the device back, stop what he's doing. And of course, he has a girl, you know, who's played by Pamela Anderson, and her role is Beth Davenport. And I think in the original is like Jane. I forgot what her name was. But this movie does play out, and I will say it plays out almost pretty cleverly the way the original Naked Gun played out. Even though this is a sequel, sort of, you gotta figure like over 30 years in the making, and it's not really canon to any of the stories. And then again, neither story was kind of canon with each other, but they just had the same characters and such. But I will say, like, with this being a new entry in the franchise, and it's definitely got a lot of cameos, it's got some throwbacks to the original. This movie almost feels like a copy of the original movie from 1988. It almost feels like a direct copy of it, and just in the way it plays out, just in the way the plot line goes, some of the gags and such. I mean, they do got a lot of new gags. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not a Naked Gun movie without any classic gags to go along with what you're looking for in a comedy parody movie such as this. And it's not even really parodying anything at all. So a parody movie is basically, okay, so you take a movie like Scary Movie and it parodies something like, okay, Scream, and it adds elements from other horror movies along with it. That's what a parody movie is. This is just a straight out American comedy movie, and it makes fun of a lot of things. It adds a lot of randomness to it, and it just constantly goes on and on. Like, there's even a scene in the movie where he tells Pamela Anderson's character to take a seat, and she leaves the office. She's like, you know what? I guess I will take a seat. And she grabs a chair and drags it out of the office as he's peering out the door at her. So, yeah, there is a lot of things going on in this movie, especially when it comes to DREBIN's character, where I will say there is a scene in there where it's kind of reminiscent to Lethal Weapon 4, where he causes so much mayhem and destruction that it almost costs the department the funding for the police squad unit, and he's got to be put on special cases, to where he's not as destructive, as he usually is when it comes to his cases. But then again, like, this movie, you got Liam Neeson, who is mostly known for a lot of his dramatic action roles. So when it comes to comedy, I guess his type of comedy, it's not all there, but it's like he almost tries hard to be it. And there are a lot of different segments and scenes in this movie where he tries to feel reminiscent to Leslie Nielsen's character from the original. And I just found myself several times sitting there listening to how he talks and how he narrates his life in the movie, and it's almost like he's trying to be what Leslie Nielsen was in these films. And you can either be like, okay, he's doing it pretty good, or he's not as great. It's not Leslie Nielsen, but we'll deal with it. We will definitely deal with it. So there are a lot of slapstick scenes, one scene right after the other. And of course, there are some serious scenes as well in this movie, which of course, when you got a movie like this, you're going to have some seriousness to it. The Lethal Weapon series, with Leslie Nielsen, it did have some serious scenes to it as well that carried on with the plot, so that way it doesn't get too carried away with the silliness and the crazy stunts and the craziness going throughout this movie, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, I think it was Lethal. No, it was I don't know why I'm thinking about Lethal Weapon now. Naked Gun 33 1/3, where there's a scene in the police station. You see a fucking T-Rex walking out in the hallway and such. Whereas in this movie, there's a segment, and you see in the trailer, there's a snowman that comes alive and it's chasing somebody with a gun. It's just the randomness of that style of comedy, and you don't see that quite anymore. That style of comedy died out in the 90s. Sadly, especially with Leslie Nielsen. It's like from the 90s through the 2000s, all you had were these very tongue-in-cheek parody movies, especially ones done by the Wayans brothers. The scary movies, the franchises for Scary Movie. You had movies like that. You had movies like Not Another Teen Movie or Epic Movie or whatever, where they just basically take a bunch of movies at that time and piece together different segments to parody them and just go along with it. And of course, that trend died out. That trend pretty much died out in a sense. And don't get me wrong, you still have some movies that came out within the last 15 years that were pretty comical, and then you had movies that they were very tongue-in-cheek, and you're like, okay, I don't get with the style. And then nowadays, like if you look at it politically, in a sense, you know, very PC, you got a lot of people that get too offended by certain styles of comedy, and it just gets too out of hand. You know, it's like people just, even people are complaining about TV shows like Seinfeld and Friends, and it's like, come on, you know, it's entertainment. It's entertainment for everybody. If you don't like that style of entertainment, don't watch it at all. You know, don't watch it. Don't even turn it on. Don't even acknowledge it. You know, like there's people out there that go along with this style of comedy. They love this style of comedy. It's entertainment, people. Get over it. So then you got a movie like this, The Naked Gun, where I guess it tries not to step on too many toes. It tries to tread lightly around people, but somebody's eventually going to get offended. You know, of course, like I said, you got O.J. Simpson, who recently died within the last 2 to 3 years. He has a picture cameo in this movie, and you got this black guy who's a police officer. He just looks at the camera and shakes his head. So it's like, is somebody going to fucking be offended by that? Like, come on, it's comedy. It really is. It's very comical. It breaks the fourth wall. We're like, yeah, O.J. Simpson, the guy who murdered his wife and his wife's lover. Yeah, come on, yeah. But, you know, this guy, he was a football star. He was a movie star. You know, he played in the Naked Gun franchise for a good bit. And then, you know, he's got a little cameo in this, and there you go. But I will say, going into this movie, even though there was a couple times where I ended up falling asleep and I had to rewind and rewatch this movie, yes, I watched it on an app that streams movies bootleg-wise. So, yeah, I didn't go to the movies because I'm like, you know what? I don't know how well this movie is going to fare out at all. Let me just go to this app that I use, you know. Unless I know the movie is well worth watching, I will go to a movie theater to see it. But I will say, after watching this, and of course getting into the reception of the film, and this is where it got me right here, is, okay, so the review critical for this movie dropped 1% within the last 12 hours, actually. Holy shit. So, yeah, on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie got 90% of 214 critic reviews are positive, and the website's consensus reads, with Liam Neeson's gravelly gravitas proving to be a perfect fit for Frank Drebin's deadpan buffoonery, The Naked Gun revives the original trilogy's daffy sense of humor like it never went out of style. Metacritic assigned the film a score of 75 out of 100, and indicating generally favorable reviews. And that's pretty much all the reviews that it has for it right now. Now, even though this movie, it only brought in so far $28.5 million out of a $42 million budget, but then again, it's still the opening weekend for this movie. You know, it's still going on across the country, across the globe, and well, even looking at it, it received positive reviews from critics and grossed worldwide. It grossed $28.5 million. So yeah, it was released in the U.S. and in the United Kingdom. So I don't know if it'll open up anywhere else outside of that. But all in all, like, for a movie like this, and especially has that reminiscing feel of the first film, especially with the plot of this movie, which involves the device which is called plot. When activated, it turns people into raving barbaric maniacs that are beating each other up. And of course, there is a way to stop it too when you turn it off. Now, when I went into that and I seen that, and I was like, you know what? This almost feels like Ricardo Montalban's character, Vincent Ludwig, in the first movie, where he had the idea of killing off the Queen of England. And how was he going to do it? He was going to use one of the baseball players, where all he had to do is push a button on his wristwatch, and somebody nearby will be hypnotized and is just sitting there chanting, "I must kill the queen," you know, and they're in this trance until they end up doing the job, you know. And it's like, okay, somebody random killed them. So it's almost like, yeah, there are a lot of scenes in this movie that kind of mimic, in a sense, to the original movie, especially the dame, you know, played by Pamela Anderson, you know, playing that role. So I will say, like, there is a couple other things that are reminiscent to the original movie. There is a little bit of the jazzy music from the original. You will definitely recognize it several times. I kind of think it gets overused a little bit, but it's almost like, yeah, it's just to remind you, yeah, we're putting a little bit of the original in this movie. But if you really want to make the audience happy and feel nostalgic, they should have brought in the original opening from the original movies and, of course, the TV show, which they didn't. You know, they just went with the Mission Impossible type segment, you know, to open the movie up and all. But I will say, like, watching this movie, I think in my state of mind, I wasn't too there to really laugh out loud in a sense. Like, I've seen a lot of good comedies where I really laughed. I mean, there was a couple segments, don't get me wrong, that it did have me chuckle a little bit in this movie. But I will say, like, there maybe a couple turnoffs here or there for me, you know, especially, like, I don't care for Seth MacFarlane's politics. I don't care too much for Seth MacFarlane. Liam Neeson, you know, he kind of rubbed me the wrong way, you know, a couple years ago. But I gave this movie a chance because it is a dedication to Leslie Nielsen, and it's the next entry in the Naked Gun franchise. And although I feel like the Naked Gun franchise should have died with 33 1/3, but, you know, it still lives on. They've been talking about doing another entry in this movie for, God, so many years. Even in, like, 2009, it says it was revealed that there was a fourth movie that was supposed to star Leslie Nielsen. It was going to be a direct-to-TV sequel, but unfortunately, Leslie Nielsen, he passed away just a year later, of course, and then, you know, they would have to go and rewrite the scripts, do the budgets and all that, and get the right people in on it. I think, like, this movie could have done a little bit better, maybe, if they brought in the Abraham Zucker team to pretty much do the movie itself. Even though you don't have Leslie Nielsen, and it's like, how can you replace or put somebody in place of Leslie Nielsen, or even what was his name, George something? Oh God, let me look that up again here. What was his name? Was it George? Yeah, George Kennedy. You know, how can you replace George Kennedy? You know, even though George Kennedy, he sadly passed away in 2016, Leslie Nielsen in 2010. And like I said, O.J. Simpson passed away just a year ago. Actually, yeah, just a year ago in April. And the only one really left alive, I think, out of all that was Priscilla Presley. You know, she's 80 years old. And Ricardo Montalban, he was just a character for their first movie. He passed away in 2009. You know, I think out of all of them, I think everybody is pretty much dead except for Priscilla Presley, I think. I really do. Ed Williams, nope, there's still some people. Oh, there's even one guy, Ed Williams. He has the character of Ted in Police Squad and in the Police Academy. He's 98 years old. Oh my God, I'm surprised they didn't ask him to star in it. But no, he don't star in movies anymore. So, but yeah, all in all, I look at the Naked Gun. It tries to be a faithful entry, depending on how you feel about this movie altogether. And I think it does actually try to be something else. And it tries so hard to be a new entry. It tries to have that original formula going for it, which it does, you know, whether you feel it does or not. And it really does feel like a Naked Gun movie in a sense, but then it doesn't really feel like it at all. Is Liam Neeson is he a good actor to fill in this position? Probably not. I think, like, Liam Neeson's character, he fills in a little bit for the darker side of Frank Drebin, but this is Frank Drebin Jr. This is the, you know, Frank's child that you briefly see at the end of 33 1/3. So, yeah. So it's a hit or miss, whether you like it or not. Me, I think, honestly, I liked it, but I didn't fully like it for various reasons. So I will give The Naked Gun 2025 a 7 out of 10. I will be fair and give it a 7 out of 10. Is it worth seeing? Yes, it is. Even if you're a fan of the old school stuff with Leslie Nielsen, if you're a fan of Police Squad, this is definitely something new to check out. It's got that old school style comedy that you don't see anymore, and I would love to see more and more studios do something like this. Now, even though they're bringing back original ideas, they're bringing back original names, trying to put original characters in them, I think it's a hit or miss depending on how your views for it are. You know, you got horror movies that are out there that are doing that, action movies and such. But I will say, if you're a fan of the Naked Gun, check it out. It's worthwhile. 7 out of 10. And that does it for today's episode of Cinemacast, guys. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. If you made it to the end of this review, please leave a like, follow, subscribe down below. What did you think about this movie? Let us know down in the comments section. If you want to follow us on our streaming platforms, Discord, and such, all those links are down below in the description section. Guys, thank you for joining me today for today's feature, The Naked Gun 2025. And until next time, guys, we'll catch you right back here at the cinema.